There is an apartment on the third floor of a quiet building in Osaka. And at 7:40 every morning before the rest of the city has fully woken up, a woman in her 50s opens her front door, steps down onto a small tiled square just inside the entrance, and removes her shoes. She places them, toes facing outward, on a narrow wooden rack. She slides her feet into a pair of soft slippers waiting beside it. And then, without pausing, without thinking about it, she walks 4 steps into her kitchen, picks up a small cloth that hangs on a hook by the sink, and wipes down the counter. A surface that, from where you're standing, already looks completely clean. It takes her under a minute. She has done this every single morning for over 30 years. Her home has never once needed what most of us would call a deep clean. Not the kind that takes a Saturday. Not the kind that requires renting a steam cleaner or setting aside an entire weekend, because the house has once again gotten away from you. And somewhere else in the world right now, someone is standing in their kitchen on a Saturday morning, looking at a sink full of dishes, a counter covered in mail and mismatched objects, and a floor that hasn't been properly cleaned in longer than they'd like to admit, feeling that familiar, heavy mix of guilt and exhaustion before they've even started. What if the difference between these two people has nothing to do with how much they clean, and everything to do with 5 small, almost invisible habits repeated daily that most of us have simply never been taught? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what those 5 habits are, why they work on a level most cleaning advice never touches, and how you can begin the first one tonight, before you go to bed. Before we get into the 5 habits, we need to talk about an idea most of us have been carrying around since childhood without ever questioning it. The idea is this: a clean home is the result of effort. The harder you scrub, the longer you spend, the more product you use, the cleaner your home becomes. Cleaning is something you do to your house in big, exhausting bursts, usually once a week, usually accompanied by some degree of dread. And for almost everyone living this way, it doesn't actually work, not because they aren't trying hard enough, but because the entire model is built on a flawed assumption that mess is something that happens to you, and cleaning is how you fight back against it. Japanese homes, across apartments far smaller than most Western houses, with families, with pets, with full lives, tend to stay clean without anything that looks like a cleaning day at all. And when researchers and writers have tried to understand why, they keep landing on the same conclusion. It isn't about cleaning harder. It's about a handful of small rituals repeated so consistently that mess simply never gets the chance to build up in the first place. 5 habits, each one almost absurdly small on its own. Together, they change everything. Let's start with the first one, because it happens before you've even taken a single step into your home. The first habit lives at your front door, and in Japan, it has a name: Genkan. The Genkan is the small entryway space, often just a step down, sometimes only a foot or 2 of floor, where shoes come off before anyone enters the home. In Japanese culture, this isn't a suggestion, it's closer to a boundary, a line between the outside world and the inside one. Here's what's actually happening when you skip this. Every surface you walk on outside, sidewalks, parking lots, gas station floors, public restrooms, leaves a residue on the bottom of your shoes. Researchers studying household contamination have found that shoe soles can carry hundreds of thousands of bacteria, along with trace chemicals, pollen, and outdoor allergens. Every step you take indoors with your shoes on is, in a very literal sense, depositing a small amount of the outside world onto your floors. And your floors are not a neutral surface. They're where children play, where pets sleep, where, in many homes, people sit. Every layer that settles there doesn't just sit quietly. It becomes part of what gets stirred into the air, ground into carpet fibers, tracked onto furniture. This is the part that's easy to miss. A home where shoes never come inside isn't cleaner because someone is cleaning more. It's cleaner because less is arriving in the first place. You don't need a renovated entryway to borrow this. A small shoe rack by the door, a low stool or bench, a basket of indoor slippers, positioned so clearly that taking your shoes off feels like the obvious, easy thing to do. Not a rule you have to remember and enforce. This habit alone, done consistently, means your floors stay cleaner for days longer. But it's also the first domino, because once the outside world stops walking in with you, the next habit becomes dramatically easier. And that one might be the most important shift in this entire video. The second habit isn't really a cleaning task at all. It's a philosophy. And it has a name that's quietly become famous in business circles, without most people realizing it was first a way of caring for a home. Kaizen, continuous improvement, through small, almost unnoticeable steps. Here's the pattern most of us fall into without realizing it. We treat cleaning as an event. It happens on a specific day, usually after things have already piled up. Dishes in the sink, clutter on the counter, a bathroom that's been quietly getting worse all week. By the time we get to it, it's not a quick task anymore. It's a project. And because it's a project, we put it off, which makes it bigger, which makes us dread it more, a loop that feeds itself. Kaizen, applied to a home, breaks that loop with one simple rule. If something takes 2 minutes or less, it gets done the moment it's noticed. Not added to a list, not saved for later, done now. Wipe the stove after you cook. Under 2 minutes, run a cloth over the bathroom sink after you brush your teeth. Under a minute. Fold the blanket on the couch before bed. Seconds. None of these feel like cleaning. That's the point. They're too small to dread. But here's what they prevent. That 2-minute wipe down, skipped for a week, becomes a 30-minute scrubbing job. That sink, left for days, becomes a project with its own supplies and its own dedicated time slot. Every one of these tiny 2-minute actions is quietly standing guard against a much bigger task in the future. And there's something else happening here, something almost nobody talks about. A counter that's wiped the moment it's dirty never has the chance to feel like a mess. There's no accumulation to feel guilty about, no growing pile to avoid looking at. The home simply stays the way it was. Which brings us to the third habit, because there's a specific window of time, every single morning, where this entire philosophy comes together in one short ritual. The third habit is called Soji, and it's the part of this video you can start tomorrow with no preparation at all. Soji refers to the kind of cleaning that's quick, light, and rhythmic. And in its original form, it comes from Zen Buddhist temples, where monks would clean their living spaces each morning, not as a chore, but as a kind of moving meditation, a way of greeting the day. The modern version of this takes about 15 minutes, first thing in the morning, and it follows a simple shape. Open a window for a few minutes, even in cold weather, to let the air move and the space feel awake rather than stale. Make the bed immediately, the moment you're out of it. Wipe the kitchen counters. A quick sweep of the floors that see the most traffic. A wipe of the bathroom sink. 15 minutes, that's all. But here's what those 15 minutes actually do. They mean you walk out the door into a home that's already reset, not one carrying yesterday's mess into today. And they mean that when you come home in the evening, tired, the first thing you see isn't a list of things that need doing. It's a space that's already quietly on your side. There's a phrase for what this creates, and it's almost impossible to translate cleanly. But the closest version is something like a home that doesn't ask anything of you the moment you walk in. 3 habits in, and so far, none of them have required more than a few minutes a day total. But the 4th habit is different. It's not really about your home at all. And for some people, it's the most uncomfortable one on this list. Stay with this one, though, because it's the habit that determines how hard the other 4 ever have to work. The 4th habit is Danshari, and it's less a cleaning habit than a way of relating to your belongings. The word is built from 3 characters: refuse, discard, separate. Together, they describe a practice of refusing what you don't need, letting go of what you don't use, and detaching from the emotional weight that objects can quietly carry. You may have heard of Marie Kondo, the Japanese organizing consultant whose approach to tidying became a global phenomenon. Her method draws directly from the same idea, but Danshari goes a layer deeper because it isn't a one-time decluttering project. It's an ongoing relationship with what comes into your life and what's allowed to stay. Here's the part that's hard to hear. The more things you own, the more things there are to clean, to organize, to move out of the way, to feel guilty about. That shelf of decorative objects has to be dusted. Every single one of them. That drawer of things you might need someday has to be opened, sorted through, closed again every time you're looking for something else. None of this shows up as cleaning in the traditional sense, but it's there, quietly adding weight to every task in your home. Japanese homes often have less, not because Japanese people don't enjoy things, but because they tend to be deliberate about what's allowed in. Every object earns its place. You don't need to empty your home to borrow this. 2 small practices are enough to start. First, for the next month, try a simple rule. For every new thing that comes in, 1 old thing goes out. Second, walk through your home and notice the objects that quietly make you feel a flicker of guilt every time you see them. The exercise equipment in the corner, the hobby supplies from something you stopped doing years ago. These aren't just taking up space. They're taking up a small amount of your attention every single day, whether you notice it or not. A home with less in it is a home with less to clean. It's almost too simple to believe, but it's the quiet engine underneath everything else on this list. And that brings us to the 5th habit, the one that ties all 4 of the others together, and the one that might change how you feel about your home more than any of the practical steps so far. The 5th habit isn't a task. It's a shift in what cleaning means. In Japanese culture, there's a long-held idea that the state of your home reflects the state of your inner life, not as a judgment, but as a kind of mirror. A clean space isn't about appearances for guests or keeping up with anyone else. It's about creating an environment that supports you, that meets you gently at the end of a long day instead of adding to it. In many Western households, cleaning is framed almost entirely as a burden, something to avoid, complain about, get through. In this view, every one of the habits we've talked about today is instead treated as a small act of care. Wiping a counter in the morning isn't a chore. It's a 2-minute message to yourself that your space, and by extension you, are worth that small effort. Taking your shoes off at the door isn't fussiness. It's drawing a line between the world outside and the place where you're allowed to exhale. Letting go of an object you've been feeling guilty about for years isn't loss. It's making room. None of these 5 habits on their own look like much. A shoe rack, a 2-minute rule, 15 minutes in the morning, one thing out for everything in, and a quiet shift in how you think about all of it. But together they replace something enormous: the dreaded cleaning day, the Saturday that disappears into scrubbing, the guilt that builds quietly all week, waiting for a single day to absorb it all. So here's what we'd invite you to try. Not next week, tonight. Before bed, choose just one small spot: your kitchen counter, your bathroom sink, the entryway by your front door, and set it up the way you'd want to find it tomorrow morning. Clear it, wipe it, make it ready. Tomorrow, when you wake up, take 15 minutes, open a window, make your bed, wipe down that one spot again if it needs it. Notice, just for a moment, what it feels like to walk into a kitchen, a bathroom, an entryway that's already been taken care of. By you, for you, before the day has even started asking anything of you. That's it. One small reset. Repeated daily, it becomes something much bigger than the sum of its parts. The woman in Osaka with her quiet morning ritual has never once thought of any of this as a system or a method or a list of habits. To her, it's simply what a home is: a place that's cared for, a little, every single day, so that it never has the chance to become something you dread. If this changed the way you think about your own home, share it with someone who's been putting off that deep clean for months, dreading the day they finally have to face it. They might be one small habit away from never needing that day at all. If this helped you, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and let us know in the comments. Which of these 5 habits are you starting with today? This has been a look into the philosophy and quiet logic behind Japanese home habits. Not a rule to follow, an invitation to notice. We'll see you in the next one.